we wanted to put together a series together around some of the core concepts that we feel like over the last 5 years of consulting that were really critical for frontline managers to understand. The biggest gap being blunt that we see in the market, and we have ourselves at times and had in the past, and I think it's a skill set we're trying to refine, is not only knowing what the data is telling you, but knowing what to do about what the data is telling you, and if the data is actually the root cause. And so we put together kind of some scenarios that we're going to go through in a couple series of videos around, hey, if this comes up, what do you do? We're going to try to make them as relevant as possible. Some of them might miss the mark. Some of the math might be off, to be candid, so ignore some of that. But the whole concept is, how do I know that what I'm seeing is actually the root cause problem? But more importantly, how do I know what to do about it? There's a lot of people that will tell you all the data in the world and all the reports in the world and say conversion rate's low. But how do you tell a sales rep what to do differently on a Monday morning when they're not hitting their number?
Yeah, and the key focus being the intended audience of these videos is frontline managers, sales directors. This
Yeah.
is meant to be viewed from a management point of view, frontline manager point of view. So we're not going to be speaking as if you're a rep, although certainly if you're a rep, this would be educational. And we're also not speaking from the executive strategic lens. This is more of a tactical, in the weeds, day to day, week to week type point of view that should empower a frontline leader to make their team better day in and week out.
Yeah, and the secondary benefit of this, in my mind, is we have this graphic around executive leadership to frontline manager tactics to field execution. The goal of this is for you when you're talking about executive leadership with your VP or CRO, that when you're talking about data, you feel comfortable explaining what you're seeing and why you're seeing it. As a benefit to you in your growth, a lot of times what limits career growth for a lot of managers is their inability to understand what's going on in the market, but more importantly, what they're seeing in the data and to be able to explain that. So that's hopefully what this series will accomplish. One of the main reasons why we put this together is we were kind of both discussing the knowing and doing gap. Ryan, you want to kind of explain the kind of buckets to that? I think that's an important piece as you kind of think through this, and to honestly self audit as you're going through day to day of like what you're actually in, what phase you're in, and where you need help.
Yeah, I think what we've experienced through a lot of engagements is um, in some cases, an organization oversimplifies the current state. And if you don't know where people are coming from, it's hard to help them get to where they want to go. And
Right.
so our perspective is that generally speaking, leaders fall into four key buckets. The first bucket is I just don't know what to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. Especially in the SaaS industry, we had a tremendous amount of promotion from frontline contributor to manager, and manager's a new job. And in many cases, unfortunately, those folks weren't equipped with, well, how do I do this new set of skills you're kind of asking me to do? I was pretty good at the role, but now that I'm managing the role, this is kind of uncharted territory for me. So you may just not know where to start or what to do, and you may not have had any instruction or structure at your organization to help you figure that out. So that's one bucket. The second bucket is I know what to do, but I may not really know how. So I know I need to be coaching, for example, but I don't really know what to coach on or how to coach well. Or I know I need to look at these reports. I'm not really sure what the reports are telling me. So that's kind of like I know what I'm supposed to be doing, but I may not know how to actually take action on it. The third one is a more of a discipline thing is I know what to do, but I'm just not doing it. Or more often than not, I'm not doing it consistently. I might know what a good one-on-one is, but maybe every week I may not be hitting that bar, or
Yeah.
I may know what to do in the analysis, but maybe I'm out of the discipline of really putting the time and effort, things like that.
Right.
Um, and then really the fourth bucket is of course the ideal one, which is I know what to do, I know how to do it, and I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So our goal through these videos is really to help you progress through that maturity. If you know nothing, no problem, we'll help you get into knowing what to do. If you know what to do but are struggling doing it or how to do it, we'll help you there. If it's a discipline thing, maybe we'll encourage you and inspire you to kind of do this stuff more frequently. And then for the folks that know it and are doing it and are kicking butt, well, then maybe these videos can just be refreshers.
Yeah. No, that's it. And the focus for this one is really knowing what to think through. And this is to get to root cause. So as a leader, before you do anything, you need to make sure that it's root cause because there's nothing more that pisses the sales rep off than when you're coming to them about the number of discovery calls they had that month, but they just closed $500,000 worth of business last quarter. So as you think through that, you need to make sure that you're basing these on scenarios and getting through that thought process going, okay, what does this rep actually need to work on? Not just holistically what my CRO is telling me what the business needs to work on. So you need to be able to critically think through this. So the scenario we want to walk through is you're looking and digesting last quarter, and you're starting to look through the first metric. And we're going to use the first metric as conversion rate of a discovery call. So from the first discovery call to getting to a second meeting, I'm not going to talk about if that's an SQL or an SAL or whatever metric people are using today, just the pure basis of a rep or an SDR got on the phone, they had a discovery call. Did they book and attend the second meeting? And so what you're seeing here is out of last quarter, what we saw is we'll take a team of 4. We saw that overarchingly, we saw a drop in 12% of conversion rate from quarter over quarter. So if you look at just that metric of, okay, discovery call conversions are down, is that good? Is that bad? 12% for some businesses might be huge. Others, it might not be anything. But let's say it's 12%. What then do you look at? So the other metric that we're showing here is the number of discovery calls held. So you're starting to look at, okay, are my reps even prospecting enough? Are they getting on the phones enough? And if the overarching team conversion rate is dropped 12%, where specifically did that drop and why? So as you look at your team, not just what the company's doing, you see that you have an overarching conversion rate of 33%. That's great. But what about the reps in your team? So how does that break out? So we broke out the 4 reps here to show you, okay, from rep A to rep D, what was the difference in conversion rate? You start to see kind of a bucket in rep B and C that, all right, we're dropping a little bit, but I don't know why. And they're also not the top people having the most discovery calls. So after looking at this, your initial inclination is rep A is great, and rep D is, needs to get some more meetings, but doing the right behaviors. And then as we drill down into this, the way we wanted to look at this is, okay, what do you do in this scenario? So rep A and rep D look decent, but you have 2 reps who clearly look like they're struggling. Well, we need to look at another metric to start to understand the thought process of what's really going on. So if we look at closed revenue for last quarter, we're taking the bar at 210 grand. We looked at rep B and rep C actually closed the most revenue last quarter, but their conversion rates are the lowest. What do you draw from that?
Yeah, I think one of the key things to think through as you do just data analysis in general is really start to try to apply the information to reality. So I think sometimes it's easy to look at a chart and just draw a conclusion like, well, it's bad, it's good.
Yeah.
We have to remember that data is there to help us answer a question. So what's the question? So the first question was we had a drop in that conversion, right? And then I had an average of 33% for my team. However, I had pretty decent variance between my reps. So the first question you want to think about is, well, why is there such a difference? I only got 4 people. I shouldn't have that big a difference between those people. So you want to go investigate that. The purpose of data analysis is generally, it's not going to give you the answer. It's going to tell you where you need to go dig more. So the first thing you want to think about is, okay, there's a pretty big distribution. Now, it could simply be that some of the people that are performing better or not are newer or more experienced, et cetera, things like that. But then, as Seth described, when you look at the actual performance, it's a little bit contrary to what we expect. The people doing high volume were not doing high dollars. So now you got to ask yourself, so what's different? So could it be that the people that are doing lower volume and conversion are being more disciplined? And so that's something you want to go look at. So again, these are not end goals, these are starting points. So for example, Seth, why don't we talk about just here, let's just pause here. We had, drop in conversion. Now we had wild distribution in conversion. And then now we have kind of a contrary effect where, okay, I'm seeing higher sales performance in the people that have lower conversion. What would you then suggest I go look at from there?
Yeah, I think that's the kind of the mindset that we have as consultants, which is we have to look at multiple different data points, and you should as well, to try to tell you the whole story. Part of it is looking at the initial data set to go, where am I going to dig? And then you should dig into two, three sets of metrics as well that correlate to that overarching conversion rate. And then once you feel like, okay, I have a sense of what the distribution is or potentially the grouping of problem, you then need to dig into execution. And that's probably the biggest gap that we see is there isn't enough correlation back to the initial data set of what's actually going on from real life execution. We're both big believers in Gong and other tools like that. So if you don't have a tool like that, invest in it. But more importantly, you have to get an understanding of what rep is doing. And for that, we want to look into the qualitation component. We use the example of pulling out 5 discovery calls and starting to look at the trends from maybe the grouping of reps. So you would take rep A and rep D, who are converting super high. I'm going to look at those subsets and look at that analysis, not individually, but as a group of people of going, what is rep A and rep D doing? And what am I finding? And so for this example, rep A and rep D, what we find out is they're basically pitching the product and convincing somebody to see a demo. And so they're always conversion rates are going to be higher if a prospect kind of auto qualifies in. And so they're potentially wasting a bunch of time on deals that aren't real, but also more importantly, they're not really selling anybody. And so now I have a skill set gap for rep A and rep D that I need to help them understand that your job isn't to convince someone just to take a demo. Your job is to help understand their business and their, use cases that they want to go solve. So that's rep A and rep D. And then you look at rep B and rep C and you start to find what Ryan was saying, which is they're actually doing a really good job of qualifying. And it's not that they are doing a poor job of following up. It's not that they're doing a poor job of, setting the stage of how your company can help. But the reality is they just need more meetings. They're doing actually a really good job, and potentially there's a targeting issue on the accounts, or there's an issue on marketing, or there might just be an issue of the type of personas they're going after. But their problem isn't that they're auto letting things go through. Their problem is that who we're going after might be the issue here, and we need to help, refine targeting or just help them get more meetings.
Yeah, and I think one of the important lessons that you can see, and this is obviously a bit of a contrived example, but I think represents reality in a lot of cases,
Yeah.
is it's really easy to get false positives and false negatives if you only look at one piece of information. So you could have concluded that B and C, they're not good reps, they're not performing, but they're the ones actually closing deals. And so what you've got to understand is sometimes the objective of dashboards and reporting is to simplify, but sometimes it oversimplifies and it doesn't actually give you the right answer. So the key thing that we're encouraging you to think about is use that data set, whether it's a dashboard or report or whatever you reference, to be the starting point to go validate why that's happening and make sure that the behavior you're looking for, in this case, someone doing proper discovery, is in fact taking place so that you can coach accordingly against it. What this also provides for you is now a ability to review and look at those underlying details. If you use Gong, you can now use trackers. You can start searching for terms, things like that, to see if this behavior that you're encouraging is continuing or the behavior they're discouraging is stopping, and start to look at those things. But hopefully this is a helpful example of how you can start with one sample of data, just one simple metric, look at another set of data, and then dive into what we would consider kind of your prep work for a one-on-one or for a team meeting to really understand what's happening out there and what's going well that you want to encourage, what potentially you want to discourage from doing, some maybe bad behaviors.
Yeah, and then I think the last piece we kind of touched on at the beginning is, you want to up level and start to get into executive level conversations. Have a point of view. Conversion rates are down across the organization. Look at your team and dissect it in this way and come back to them and say, hey, here's my point of view and what's going on. Here's how I'm trying to fix it.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing worse than people arguing over data in a meeting without having any answer to why. And I think you'll earn a lot of credibility for your team as well as you start to explain why you're coaching certain areas when you can explain things like this to go, hey, as we're seeing the data set, if you just auto convert deals into demo, look how much time you're wasting in a quarter, and look how many deals we're actually losing if you don't start to qualify some of this stuff out earlier. So
Yeah.
we'll go through some more examples on this. Hopefully the kind of framework is pretty simple, which is whatever initial metric you're looking at, have a drill down metric or hopefully two or three, and then dig into the qualitative side of things. Hopefully you have Gong or a tool like that where you can dig in super quickly, but you need to have a thought process around how you go through that. And then teach your team that as well, about how you're going through the thought process so that they can almost self-audit and say, hey, I'm noticing these trends as well. What do you think about this? And then your job just becomes a little bit easier as a manager.
Yeah. Well, hope this was helpful. We're going to be creating a series of these videos, so stay tuned for more, and appreciate you joining us today.